समझ नहीं आ रहा अपने सैलरी इंक्रीमेंट का क्या करूं।
बेटा इतना क्या सोच रहा है? अपने म्यूचुअल फंड्स के एसआईपी का टॉप अप करा ले। दिस इज द राइट टाइम।
क्या? समझ में नहीं आया।
बेटा इतना क्या सोच रहा है? अपने म्यूचुअल फंड्स का एसआईपी टॉप अप करा ले। दिस इज द राइट टाइम।
आप समझा।
Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.
Hang on, what? It's getting impossible to keep pace with Donald Trump's many changing moods. Just hours ago, in fact, yesterday, this time, we were talking about Trump's Truth Social post where he was talking about losing India to deep, dark China, India and Russia both. Hours later, he's talking about India and Modi being great friends and how nobody should worry about the nosediving India-US relations because, you know what? Everything's okay. And if everything's not okay, it's going to be okay. Have both countries worked out an off-ramp behind the scenes? Or is this Trump just being Trump, volatile, unpredictable, unstable? And then there's a more fundamental question. Was it the power huddle between Modi's Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin that triggered this sudden olive branch from Donald Trump? I'm Barkha. You're with the Mojo Story. On the program today, never a dull moment in the India-US equation. Moments or hours after the US Commerce Secretary suggested that India would be soon apologizing to the United States of America and Trump would get his way, it was Donald Trump who at a press briefing spoke about how he and Prime Minister Modi were great friends and how, in fact, whatever was happening between India and the US was kind of going to sort itself out. In fact, he went so far as to say, don't worry about it. But then just a few hours earlier, Trump on Truth Social was talking about losing India and Russia to deep dark China. In fact, he even wished all three countries the best and said, may you have fabulous futures. Has something happened in the back channel that we do not understand? Or is Trump just being Trump? And tomorrow he or others in his administration, whether it's Howard Lutnick or Peter Navarro, say something absurd and insulting again. It's still not clear what happens to the 50% tariff slapped on India, 25% of which is a so-called penalty for India's purchase of Russian oil. By the way, China buys more oil from Russia than India does, but hasn't been slapped with any penalty. But Prime Minister Modi accepted the olive branch and was quick to take to X and say that he and India reciprocated the feelings of the American president about India and the United States of America sharing a special relationship. Search me. I have no idea what's going on. Let's try and understand with our panel of very distinguished guests. Maybe they can help us understand what's going on. Is there a rapprochement in the works? Is this Trump just being Trump, unstable, unpredictable, or is this indeed the art of diplomacy? Joining me is a veteran diplomat, Dr. Mohan Kumar. Always a pleasure to see you. Also joining me is Tavleen Singh, well-known author and columnist. Also joining me today is Chitra Subramaniam, investigative journalist and author. It's good to have you with us, Chitra. And joining me from the United States today is David Frum, who's, of course, a well-known and very senior writer at The Atlantic. We're all familiar with his writings, and it's great to have you with us, David. I want to start by playing out this clip of Trump at the Oval Office. Literally, I feel sometimes that I have to pinch myself to see which Trump is real, because literally, this time last evening, I was doing a program on Trump's lament about losing India and Russia to China. I don't know what happened in the intervening hours, but take a look at this statement from the American president.
Mr. President, who do you blame for losing India to China? In your post earlier today in the morning, you didn't put that out.
I don't think we have. I've been very disappointed that India would be buying so much oil, as you know, from Russia. And I let them know that. We put a very big tariff on India, 50% tariff, very high tariff. I get along very well with Modi, as you know. He's great. He was here a couple of months ago. In fact, we went to the Rose Garden and the grass was so soaking wet. It was such a terrible place to have a news conference. I said, well, let's use a beautiful white stone emblematic of the White House. Okay. And it's been very well received. But we had a news conference on the grass. It was my last news conference I had on the grass because everybody sunk in. You probably sunk in. Every reporter out there, they ruined their shoes. We made that change. It's been a really well-received change. Yeah, please go ahead.
And are you ready to reset relations with India at this point?
I always will. I'll always be friends with Modi. He's great. Prime Minister, he's great. I'll always be friends, but I just don't like what he's doing at this particular moment. But India and the United States have a special relationship. There's nothing to worry about.
This is on the same day, if you count this in Eastern time in America, that the Commerce Secretary of the US said that India would soon be at the table saying, sorry, it's within hours of Trump's own post saying that India had been permanently lost to the deep, dark world of China. I'm going to start with you, David Frum, and request you to help us make sense of what is happening. Either Trump changes his beliefs from day to day, or something has happened in the back channel between two countries that we're not yet fully aware of. Which one do you think it is?
I think the former. One of the great advantages of democratic rule of law states is they have consistency. Individuals matter less, systems matter more, the continuity of the state matters. The US-India relationship has been the work of presidents from Bill Clinton, who really started it after the Cold War, got it on a smoother footing, George W. Bush, in whose administration I served, and so on. And this consistency, under Barack Obama as well, this consistency has been promoted by many institutions in both countries. As the United States has moved under Trump to a more personalist and authoritarian regime, as India unfortunately has done the same, and as the standards of appointment have deteriorated. I mean, the idea that a loudmouth fool like Howard Lutnick would be in the cabinet and would stay there, it would have been inconceivable under previous administrations, or a crackpot like Peter Navarro. So these kinds of people don't belong anywhere near the government of the United States. There they are, and the bad manners of the president empower the bad manners of the people who serve him. We're in a real problem, and these tariffs are still in place. They're illegal. 2 courts have ruled that, and the Supreme Court likely will do the same as well sometime in the fall. But until the courts decisively speak, President Trump wields the power to impose taxes on the American people without consent of Congress, or at least he asserts that power. And so far, the United States and the world is suffering that power.
So, David, if, in other words, before I open this up, if you were India, you would not be taking Trump at his word, because Trump could just as easily change his word tomorrow morning when he wakes up.
Take Donald Trump at his word? Take Donald Trump at his word? Seriously? Who would take Donald Trump at his word? He lies all the time, and he lies to himself. He's flighty. He's irresponsible. He has very little object stability. But what India would want to do is to observe these tariffs as realities from an American point of view as well. And let me say one thing from an American point of view as the one American here. India is both an essential and extraordinarily difficult partner for the United States. India is not an ally. It's not a dependent. It's a major independent entity with its own interests that often conflict with those of the United States. Yet, in order to build a coalition balancing China, which is the American supreme objective, balancing China peacefully, India is very important, maybe indispensable. So you have to manage both the difficulties of the India relationship and the indispensability of the India relationship. That takes some tact, and this crew of loudmouths and cowards and crooks is in no position to exercise tact and has no interest in exercising tact.
Strong words there, very bluntly said, Dr. Mohan Kumar. The question then is, was the Prime Minister too quick to sort of embrace this with his own reciprocity? Because, how can we count on Donald Trump to be predictable, to be stable, to be, as David Frum says, to be counted on for his word? I don't know that we had a choice. I would imagine that diplomacy demanded that the Prime Minister say something back. But was it too early? Should we have waited a while?
I actually thank you for having me. I actually think the timing was brilliant. In the middle of all this to and fro, I thought the tweet put out. It's not a tweet. He does it on Truth Social, but whatever you call it, the social media post by President Trump was the most neutral that we have seen in the last 2 months. I thought the President Trump offered an off ramp, and Prime Minister Modi grabbed it.
Hang on. You don't mean the post about losing India to China? To China, you found that a neutral comment?
That was not neutral. I'm saying this is the most neutral, the latest one, in which he says we have a special relationship, etc., to which Prime Minister Modi reacted. That's what I'm saying. The most neutral post to come out of President Trump was the latest one. And I thought Prime Minister Modi's timing was impeccable because it was an off-ramp. My assessment is slightly different from David, which is that I genuinely think President Trump and his colleagues have come to the conclusion that the costs of alienating India actually far outweigh the benefits for America. And therefore, he tried this off-ramp. It's worked. I would still say you have to take President Trump seriously, but not literally. You take him seriously because he is president of the United States, but don't take him literally. I also think, sorry.
But what changed? I'm so sorry. I just want to understand, how can an American president, at 6 p.m., I'm just making up a time here, I don't know the exact time of his Truth Social post, say India has been lost to China, to the deep, dark world of China, have his commerce secretary say India will soon be at the table apologizing, and less than 8 hours later say, don't worry about it, everything's good. Like, how do you take that either literally, seriously, or something we should respond to?
2-3 things, Barkha, whether we like it or not. First, he is the president of the United States. Second, he is unpredictable, mercurial, he changes. Third, you simply have to deal with him in this administration. I really don't care what the others are saying about India because it doesn't matter. They know it, we know it. The only person who calls the shots in this administration is President Trump. So you deal with him the best you have. And I thought that really this was the perfect moment to do this, because bear in mind that nothing had really stopped between United States and India. Everything else was going on as usual. The 2+2, the Yuddha Abhyas, which was the joint military exercise, the intelligence cooperation, everything was going on as usual. The only thing that was going on was at the top level and amongst his colleagues, there was a lot of, a bit of a slanging match going on. I would argue still, and I know that some on your panel will disagree, this is an important relationship for India, no matter what you say, what you think. We are a 4 trillion economy. The next in line in terms of being above you is 20 trillion, China. And the US is a 30 trillion economy. Let me break it down in economic criteria. I mean, in terms of economic criteria, frankly, I frankly think India had lost the geopolitical sweet spot for the last 3 months. In February, we had it. I think we are just clawing back our way to back in terms of being in the geopolitical sweet spot. That's the way I look at it. We haven't changed our position fundamentally from Tianjin. We've just come back. We've done what we have done. But I think, as you wrote in today's paper, I can't remember which paper, but the challenge
Hindustan Times.
The challenge of doing business with China is something everybody knows. So India is back to multi-alignment. So we try to do what we can. But really, I thought this was an off-ramp. Now, in terms of why, how so soon, frankly, who knows the mind of President Trump? I don't. And he is the nemesis of every single geopolitical analyst, by the way. You're not the only one. All of us are stumped.
Okay, fair. The last point is fair. I will say I am extremely personally uncomfortable with investing too much in China. And I saw what happened at the SEO summit is a purely tactical step and not a strategic long-term step necessarily, but it seemed to have riled up Trump. It seemed to have provoked attention in the Western media, which otherwise the story was languishing on the margins of it. Tavleen, what do you make of it all? You know, Jaishankar gave a statement and he said, of course, it's a special relationship. I actually think we all agree that as a natural affinity, most Indians would feel a greater natural affinity with the American state than with China. I actually think, Ambassador Kumar, we'd all agree on that. But I think the caveat would be we expect to be treated as an equal. This is about sovereignty and not about Russian oil. This is about, don't tell us, sit up, stand up, do push-ups. You can't talk to us like Howard Lutnick and Peter Navarro, and you certainly can't talk to us like Trump has been talking either. Something has changed, God knows for how long and God knows what.
I don't think anything has changed, number one. Okay, Trump remains unpredictable, bullying, difficult, and we have to deal with him like you would deal with any other despot, right? Like we've dealt with other despots. Don't forget Nehru was friends with Stalin. So, he's a despot. He's an unpredictable. The Americans have now finally got their own despot, right? And so we remain a democratic country. Narendra Modi is not the same as Trump. So, for a start, let's remember that. But I'm very uncomfortable with all of this being played out on social media. I don't think that our prime minister should have responded at all. Why do we, why are we chasing after every last tweet that the American president puts out? We know perfectly well that we have a relationship with the Americans and that it's valuable to them as well. But, let's have less, tweeting. Let's, really sort of concentrate on the real stuff. And, I don't think foreign policy can be made on X or Twitter, or whatever. But I'm very uncomfortable with the prime minister responding the way he did. And as for the Chinese thing, I'm very happy that he left before the military parade. I didn't really enjoy seeing him there in that little club of despots at all.
But is your problem with the fact that Prime Minister Modi responded in a very public way on Twitter or X? Or suppose alternatively, he picked up the phone and said, hey, somebody showed me your press conference at the Oval Office, and I'm glad you sort of have brought down temperatures. Good to talk to you. Let's sort this out. You would have been okay with that?
That would have been preferable. That would have been preferable. Because, for a start, his relationship, as I've said before on your show, I just don't think that, my friend Modi and I like Modi. We're talking about India, right? It's not about your friendship with Modi or whether you like him or not. And similarly with our prime minister, the relationship is between two countries. And I don't think that, the tweeting to each other, etc. But I don't think that the prime minister should have responded at all.
Chitra, what do you think? Till yesterday, we were talking about the White House trying to put pressure on European nations to not buy oil from India. To put this into context, while Trump is ostensibly punishing India for the purchase of Russian oil, Europe actually buys that oil after it's refined up to a value of $15 billion. Petroleum products are actually exempt from Trump's 50% tariffs. America too buys refined petroleum products from India. So there's a whole amount of hypocrisy there. Now the White House has been trying to get the Europeans, or till yesterday, to not buy oil from India. What is the view from where you are? How is Europe looking at all of this? And how are you looking at this sudden? Last night, you and I were exchanging messages. It was a totally different story. I woke up, it was a totally different story.
Yeah, thanks, Tavleen, for having me on your show. Europe is. I am also married into a European family, so we discuss a lot of these politics. And I agree with Tavleen. I don't think that foreign policy should be a meme or a tweet. And I agree with David. I think that institutions matter more than individuals, and individuals will come and go. And it's the institutions that build democracy. So fundamentally, the United States and India are democracies, and we have to focus on that. Europe is also a democracy. We can talk about Russia. I agree with your view on China. I don't trust China one bit. And that big show that they had, it just showed their power. And who made them powerful? It was these countries that went for cheap Chinese thing. Everything was so cheap. And their economies were so dependent that during COVID, they couldn't even manufacture a needle or a thread. So this is what we're looking at. I believe that, in my view, I think the United States will retreat from Asia. I think it will. They will retreat, and I think they will focus on their region. I think they're fighting with themselves. They're not fighting with Venezuela. And I think that in Europe, there will be Russia. Europeans have to get their act together. They haven't got their act together. They don't know what to do. I mean, some of the statements are really, really worrisome. And there will be China. So we are looking at these countries. Now, India, I think we're doing okay. We're doing fine. We just simply have to remain calm. We have a fundamentally good relationship with the United States. It is our partner. They think we are difficult. I don't think we are difficult. We are growing. And like any growing nation, we have our own needs. They have their needs, and this will be sorted out. There's no need to tweet all the time. And to come back to your question, I think the way to respond could have been maybe Jaishankar could have said that the two leaders have spoken, or someone. We've simply got to get off Twitter. And, foreign policy analysis is not a meme. And it's just really frightening for me. And just for that last one point, that summit in Alaska, I mean, I think Putin was just on top. And I read somewhere that somebody in the US Department, Trump's team, they came out looking ashen. I would come out looking ashen if I was them, sitting in the same room as Putin and Lavrov, and you don't know who they are. I mean, I feel that Trump in the second term, he wants people who are like his lackeys. He probably was so hurt in the first term that I don't think he's surrounded by intellectuals or, policy people. He's just got people who like him. That's it. And that's not good. Yeah.
So thanks for that, Chitra. The big question then, I think, for the panel is this. Is there a good cop, bad cop play here? Or will the Peter Navarros, the Howard Lutnicks, whom David has so eloquently called, a crass loudmouth and so on, are they going to keep shut now? Are they going to take their cue from the American president? Or, and secondly, the important question for India is, do these 50% tariffs, 25% of which are penalty, get walked back? We don't know the answer to that question. In the meantime, it is instructive to listen to Lutnick, because this was literally, I think, just maybe 4 hours, 5 hours before Trump made his statement about, how Modi is a great friend and India and US are special. Take a look.
Any type of deal or backing down to a lower rate with India?
I would expect, like you saw it in Canada, right? The Carney got elected with this term elbows up, meaning let's fight with America. They put on retaliatory tariffs. They were all bravado. And what happened? Their GDP negative 1.6%, unemployment rocketing towards 8%. And what did Carney just do? He just finally dropped his retaliatory tariffs. So I think what happens is it's all bravado because you think it feels good to fight with the biggest client in the world. But eventually your businesses are going to say, you've got to stop this and go make your deal with America. So I think, yes, in a month or 2 months, I think India is going to be at the table and they're going to say they're sorry and they're going to try to make a deal with Donald Trump. And it will be on Donald Trump's desk how he wants to deal with Modi. And we leave that to him. That's why he's the president.
Speaking of making a deal.
So, David, I want to come to you. I think there's a fundamental lack of understanding of India in this Trump administration, because it doesn't actually matter who's the prime minister, which party is in power. As a country emerging only now from its colonial past, there's a great sense of umbrage at being told what to do, and which is probably why you mentioned that India, from the American point of view, is a difficult partner. From an Indian point of view, hey, we're an autonomous nation. We have our own interests. We're not your ally. We lean towards you. Maybe we shouldn't. Do you think the Lutnicks of the world are now going to keep shut? Are they going to take the cue from Trump? Or is this something else going on, a kind of schizophrenic response from the Trump administration?
Well, Lutnick in that interview used the term bravado, I think, a couple of times. And that is actually what he is displaying. And we need now to look inside the United States to understand the great difficulty that the Trump administration faces. The Constitution of the United States awards power over tariffs and trade to Congress, not to the president. Congress, because it understands that Congress has protectionist tendencies, beginning in 1934, Congress has delegated some of its tariff powers to the president, but in a limited way. What Donald Trump did is to take these various limited individual grants of discretion to the president and build them into a system where he claims emergency power to impose any tariff on any country for any reason at any time and to leave it there permanently, and to create a whole alternative system of revenue that the president is imposing without the consent of the legislature, just the way the Stuart monarchs did in England and got their heads cut off and their dynasty overthrown. Two courts, first the United States Court of International Trade, which is the most important court governing trade, and then an appellate court over that court have said these tariffs are completely illegal, or not completely, but almost completely illegal, almost all of them. The whole structure, not only of the Trump's power system, but its fiscal system is in crisis. When the Supreme Court rules on these matters, probably in the fall, they are likely to say that those lower courts have mostly got it right, and the tariff structure is going to disappear. Meanwhile, the American economy is going into shock. The job miracle has slowed. Donald Trump, in his first term, had 3 years of a good economy before COVID. But in this second term, he has almost immediately attacked the basis of American prosperity. And you can see this summer, prices are rising. Unemployment, job growth has stopped. Unemployment will soon rise. And his main weapon is about to be taken out of his hands by the courts because it was illegal all the time.
So you believe that he's not going to be able to sustain his tariff policy?
I think if the law and Constitution of the United States mean anything, he should never have had the tariff policy in the first place. This Supreme Court is highly political, and it very much leans toward Trump and tries to protect him from himself. It invented out of nothing a whole doctrine that the president has criminal immunity. They might try to help him with tariffs, but the Constitution is there. And the laws that Trump is invoking are all very limited grants of discretion for short-term tariffs for specific reasons, not an indefinite system of revenue created by the president without Congress. If he's allowed to do that, you might as well just repeal the Constitution there, because the fundamental fact of the American Constitution is that Congress controls revenue. And Donald Trump is saying, no, the president, like Charles I, can raise his own money in his own way in massive amounts.
Dr. Mohan Kumar, therefore, the question for us remains, what good is this off-ramp if the tariffs are still in place?
So, if you don't mind, let me respond to Ms. Tavleen Singh and Chitra. In all fairness, when you compare India to what EU, Japan have done, I leave China on the side because China had important leverage in terms of rare earths, which others don't have. Both EU and Japan, if you compare India's position and what we have done so far, I would have to say we have held up very, very well. That's point number one. Point number two, foreign policy is not done on Twitter. And as an ex-diplomat, I'll be the first to admit to that. This is the first time Prime Minister Modi is responding. It's not as if every week PM Modi has been responding to President Trump on the tweet. This is the first time. I genuinely think this will have the effect of defusing the crisis and unblocking the relationship. That is at the top level, by the way. As I said, at every other level, the relationship has been continuing. It's not as if we have stopped talking. And that's what the Jaishankar means when he says we have been engaging. Now, as to your question, my view is I'm not naive, okay? If one way of looking at it is day after tomorrow, he can actually say we are going back, and that can happen. Somehow I doubt that, because it is my conviction that there are people in the United States who have come to the conclusion, including the editorial Newsweek, including what others have told them, that you cannot alienate India. It doesn't make sense. Some people have said it is the most massive self-harm that you can commit. I genuinely think there has been a reassessment in the US that the costs of alienating India actually outweigh the benefits. As for your question on tariffs, I don't think tariffs and trade was ever the problem. You will grant me, Barkha, I know a little bit about trade and tariffs. I have inside information that this is actually initialed. Our offer is an outstanding offer, which a lot of people in India are not comfortable, by the way. We have given 0% tariffs for a lot of American industrial products. It's only agriculture, dairy that is being sought to be protected. The Americans know, and I think we know, this offer cannot be better. Take it from me. You can tweak it here and there, but this cannot be better. But you and I have spoken about this on one of your earlier shows. This was never about trade and tariffs. And you know that as much as I do.
I couldn't agree with you more. And hence my question is, if this was about not getting credit that Trump wanted for a purported role in Operation Sindoor, in halting the hostilities between India and Pakistan, which India does not accept, if this was about not flattering Trump and recommending him for a Nobel, well, that's not changing. That's not changing.
I think there is one thing which is changing, in my view. That is not changing. And I think we should have a private conversation with I've said sequentially we should do three things. One, try to seal the trade deal. And you're right. I'm actually concerned that we should not now allow pharma and semiconductors and electronic items is my concern. Not so much, okay, 50% is bad. But you please bear in mind that right now, electronics and pharma are going at 0%. And he has anticipated 200%, whatever. There is a Section 232 investigation which is going on. We will have to prevent that. There needs to be a trade conversation, and I think that's going to happen soon. There was a team going to come from the US that was postponed. So I think we need to do that. Sequentially, the most important thing we can do, the second thing is on Russian oil. We simply have to make a presentation to the Americans that India going to zero imports of oil, hypothetically, will actually make the international oil price shoot up so much that it will hurt the US. And it will have an impact on the midterm elections. So we will need to buy more energy purchases from US is one way. I think that is something we can talk about. On Pakistan and mediation, the conversation has to be private. It cannot be public. And that is something that we have to impress on the Americans. We cannot do public diplomacy on a sensitive relationship like Pakistan. But I actually think, I would like to understand what is the cost of this tweet. Please tell me. We are standing firm.
You mean the prime minister? You mean the prime minister's tweet? The prime minister's tweet.
Yes.
Okay.
Nobody is saying we have lost out on prestige. We are not crawling on all our fours. So what is the downside? I'd like to know. And this is not as if Prime Minister Modi has been tweeting every week. This is the first time he has responded to President Trump. And that is because, as I said, this is the most neutral tweet to come out, where he says it's a special relationship and don't worry about it. And therefore, the Prime Minister of India is addressing that particular thing. He's not even said friends with Modi. He's not responding to that. What he is responding is President Trump's positive assessment of our ties. What's wrong with that? And he's saying India and the US have a comprehensive strategic partnership. So I don't know, there are different ways of looking at this. I'm not, it'll be naive for me, having done 40 years of diplomacy, that there will be no problem in the future. I'll be naive if I said that. But I still think this diffuses the crisis. It unblocks the relationship. For me, that is important because, I have to say this just 1 minute, Barkha. You look at the situation economically, somebody said we are doing fine. You have to talk to people in Tirupur, Surat, Noida, and Orissa to know how well people are doing. We are going through a period of jobless growth in India, So these exports are important. It's a $50 billion market at stake. I know I sound mercenary, but I am concerned. I'm really concerned about India's economic situation. Yes, we can take the pain, but the question is you have to balance it out. And like I said, if you're not sacrificing your prestige, you're not crawling on your force, and you're maintaining your dignity. In fact, my friends from Japan and Europe called me today to say, hey, you guys seem to be doing well. That's the way they look at it. Look at what Japan has to go through. And Chitra should know what Europe is going through. He's now turned the guns on Europe. And he's saying, I'm going to put tariffs. I'm not saying the relationship is going to be trouble-free, but I think this diffuses the crisis and unblocks the situation. For me, that's important.
I think that's a fair question. And let me put it to both Tavleen and Chitra. Tavleen, I'll start with you. Imagine, if you will, that the Prime Minister would have remained silent. Modi would have remained silent. There could have also been an analysis of that silence as this problem is really personal. Trump tried to de-escalate. The Prime Minister didn't respond. And there is 2.2% of India's GDP that is potentially vulnerable. And there is geopolitical vulnerability, which I think is almost more important, because who's going to trust China after its support to Pakistan in Operation Sindoor? There aren't a lot of great options here from a strategy point of view. If we can have a cautious rapprochement with China, I assume we can have a cautious opening the door a little bit with Trump. Much as I personally find him absolutely offensive in the way he's been talking to India.
I totally disagree with Mr. Kumar. I know he's the diplomat and I'm just a journalist, but I really believe that these conversations should not be held in. He didn't send Xi little lovey-dovey tweets, did he? He opened a door quietly, and he should have done the same here. If Trump wanted a rapprochement, that could have been done privately. So I actually totally oppose the fact that these conversations should be held in public, because what does it achieve? Who is he going to impress by, responding publicly? The Indian...
But Trump conducts his entire government in public.
Yes, but he's not the, the ringmaster. We have our own way of dealing with things. We don't have to follow suit. I mean, even with Europe, there's been no public kind of, discussion. Do it privately. So I stand by that. Secondly, of course, it's about trade. So to say it's not about trade is, is baffling. Of course, it's about trade. And especially with someone like Trump, who actually, even when he said that he'd brought about a ceasefire between India and Pakistan, said, I threatened them. I said to them, I'm not going to trade with you. And all these planes were coming down. And, the other thing that's very worrying, which I really am, terrified of, is the illiteracy of the people around him. I mean, what's the Navarro says, the Indian people should know that it's Brahmins who are profiteering. He doesn't even know that that Brahmins are not running big business in India. That it has nothing to do with Brahmanism.
But when you say it's about trade, surely you don't believe it's about the purchase of Russian oil. He wanted flattery. He wanted flattery.
All right, 1 minute. I've been following his statements. One day it's about Russian oil. They're buying tobacco. You just go through his statements. The next day it's something else. The third day it's something else. So, I think that India should remain the way it is. We don't have to be... he's not the ringmaster. We make our own foreign policy, and I really wish we would do it in private. We should, we don't want to lose the American market, for sure. But I don't think that the Prime Minister tweeting his, I'm deeply appreciative, is going to make a difference.
Chitra, this can be argued both ways. I think we've got to look ahead, right? Looking ahead, what are we going to look out for to see that something is on the mend? It's got to be, Shashi Tharoor, I think, just gave a statement saying healing is going to take more than a tweet. This is Tharoor's statement just in. And that's the point. What next?
Okay, now to come back to Ambassador Mohan, I've done GATT and WTO, and he knows that. And textiles has always been kept out under the multi-fiber agreement. We've really bled. India has really bled, and we continue to bleed on that. So looking forward, looking ahead, I think that our government should listen to our people, to our traders, and figure out what their problem is. I agree, we've really gone out of our way. The market access deal, it's the best we can do. Okay, we really have done that. What more do they want? What I don't agree is that why must we allow others to define our foreign policy? Why, we are growing as a nation. Why do we have to go and say, listen, this is what's happening with Russia, or this is what we are doing? Why should we do that? Why? And just because Europe is in trouble, just because Europe is now, they have failed economies, let them do their thing. We have been out there going through great difficulty, and we've managed to steer our course. And the problem with the tweet is that tomorrow Trump is very capable of tweeting something else. You see, I had muted him, but now at night, I sit and worry, now what is he going to say? And the important thing, Tavleen, and I want to end here, is that the trade distortion that happens, the uncertainty that goes into trade, and Mohan will know this, that when you start, you're looking for some certainty. and then you go up and down, up and down. I know that in the high seas, they dump oil, they dump commodities. So people are scared. People are worried. And you cannot conduct trade in an atmosphere of worry. And America is such a powerful economy. And then now what's going to happen to the H-1B1 visas? That's another issue. Is he going to throw out all the Indians? So this kind of uncertainty, we have to address this. So
I'm glad you've raised that last point about H-1B visas. I do have to start taking closing comments, but David, I want to come to you on this. In the midst of this tariff war, there has been a genuine sort of anti-Indian sentiment that's been whipped up in sections of the MAGA base, in sections of Trump's hardline base. And we've seen a fair amount of racism on social media. We've seen calls for American firms to stop outsourcing work to Indian companies. There's all of this debate going on. I know the newest job figures were out, I think, yesterday. Not great for the American outlook. Do you believe that this ends matters here for some time? It kind of de-escalates things, at least rhetorically? Or do you believe that there is a deep-seated Indian-American sentiment also taking root in at least the right wing or the MAGA base in the US?
Yeah. Donald Trump's need for attention dwarfs his need for any policy outcome. And the only way you get attention is by creating constant uproar. And so that's what he will do. So no, you should never assume that you've reached the end of the story. There is no end to this story, because Donald Trump is, in my assessment, yes, he's an autocrat, but before he's an autocrat, he's a crook. And before he's a crook, he's a head case. And the way to predict him is to understand that his damaged psychology will always govern his actions at any given moment. The argument over Indians and H-1Bs is a very important one within the MAGA coalition, because on the one hand, Donald Trump is deeply beholden to a network of economic oligarchs, especially in the tech industry. They funded his campaign in 2024. They have a lot of influence over important people, and they want the H-1Bs. On the other hand, the MAGA ideological base, the MAGA talkers, they have a lot of issues with the H-1Bs. They are driven by a very strange dynamic of both racial and sexual politics. One of the big drivers, and the vice president expresses this a lot, is why can't marginal men get better dates? Why won't women put up with them? And how do we change the American economy so that marginal men have better marriage prospects, which is a crazy way to run an economy, but that's the way the vice president and people, the ideological group around him, think. And so for them, H-1Bs are just an issue of such symbolic importance, dwarfing any real importance. So there will be a contest. And Trump, as the debate we've been seeing in past days over vaccines in the United States shows, Trump is unusually beholden to what you would think is a small kooky fringe. I mean, who is against vaccinating against polio? Crazy people. But crazy people are a very important part of the MAGA coalition. And who would think that you should sacrifice America's growth prospects in order to make some marginal men feel they have a better dating chance? Crazy people. But those crazy people wield a lot of influence. So this H-1B issue has been a flashpoint. It will continue to be a flashpoint. And Trump's behavior will be as unpredictable and destructive tomorrow as it was yesterday.
Well, that's a health warning that I think some of us need to heed. That said, Ambassador Kumar, I'll give you a quick closing word. I get your point. We didn't elect Trump. We've got to deal with whoever runs the US government, whether he's a head case, an autocrat, or a crook, to use three words that David Frum just used. We've got to secure India's interests. What for you will be actual progress beyond these exchange of pleasantries on X? What for you will be actual improvement?
So I'm glad you're asking this question, and I'll be quick. Look, I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. So the only thing I share among the three panelists, my illustrious panelists, is that there is unpredictability, uncertainty, and I think that's a given. There are 26 sectoral dialogues between India and the United States, 26 at last count. If you were to ask me what I would do, this engagement has continued. I would activate all the 26 sectoral dialogues all at once. This is a short window that we have got, that really now the relationship seems to have a better climate at the top. Use that to activate the sectoral dialogue and see where the relationship goes. Because frankly, Barkha, this is too important a relationship for India to allow this to for India to allow it to fail. So we should at least be doing everything from our side to make sure the relationship works, is all I'm saying.
All right, we leave it there. I think we can all agree on this much. We live in uncertain times. The tonality is different today. The tonality may not be different tomorrow. That much I think we agree on. It's interesting that David Frum mentioned the influence of tech bros, as they call the big tech leaders, on the Trump administration. Trump was dining with them just last night. There are some whispers, in India that, do they have an influence? Many of them are headed, some of these technology firms are headed by Indian Americans. Many of them have links back to India. We simply don't know. Many questions, too few answers. And I would still say we're not out of the woods yet on an extended period of uncertainty and volatility. We leave it there. David Frum, Ambassador Dr. Mohan Kumar, Chitta Subramaniam, Tavleen Singh, a pleasure. And to everybody, have a great weekend and see you soon.
It's great to see you here. Thank you for watching our work. If you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click the bell icon and subscribe to Voter Story and support independent, robust journalism.